Hello everyone, my name is General Palefas. I'm a German YouTuber focusing on strategy games, and today I'm joined for an interview by Quinn Duffy, game director at Relic Entertainment, Phil Boulle, narrative lead at Relic Entertainment, and Michael Mann, the executive producer at World's Edge. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to get some more details in Age of Empires 4. Since I on my channel am mainly casting multiplayer matches, online matches, and my interest therefore lies in that field, I would love to hear more from you on your plans for the multiplayer. But before I go into any specific questions, I would like to give you the opportunity to broadly outline what the game and the multiplayer experience will be like, and maybe how the novelties of the game in comparison to its predecessors will affect the PvP gameplay. So whoever would like to start may start.
Well, I can start with that. I mean, there are a number of things that we wanted to do to maybe modernize the Age experience a little bit, to bring some of our sort of Relic experience, bring a lot of feedback from the community that we engaged with as part of the development. And I think the thing that might be most interesting for the multiplayer experience is in the civilization design. Ultimately, that's your avatar that you're going to engage with online, and we wanted to make sure that our civilizations, we're going to ship with 8, are more sort of diverse and asymmetrical in terms of gameplay than we've seen in other entries in the franchise. And so that opens up a lot of different options for players, a lot of different strategies. Each of the civilizations, plays uniquely, is kind of befitting their historical legacy, and so there's going to be a kind of fun challenge to learn the civilizations, and I think to become expert in all of them is going to be a real long-term challenge for competitive players. So very, very different civilizations. They all play really uniquely, and I think that's going to make a lot of fun for playing and watching.
Yes. If anyone likes to add.
Yeah, I'll just add on that I think, we've really leaned into celebrating these cultures as inspiration for the gameplay. So I think even the most competitive PvP players will get to see those echoes of, what makes and made the Mongols so special, what makes the English special, etc. I think there's also some exciting new mechanics that are added on top of the Age of Empires formula. So some of the foundation will still be there, but you have, expanded siege gameplay, stealth woods, and a variety of other details that really will, make for a fresh experience for our players.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. Michael, do you also want to jump in?
Yeah, I just jump in. I think Quinn highlighted it beautifully about the asymmetry of the civilizations and the depth in them, and the different ways that you progress through the ages and your choices. You just don't hit an age up button anymore. You choose a landmark, and each of those may have military economy benefit. So whether how the style of gameplay you play or who you're playing may make you choose a different landmark. And then I would just add to this is that we brought our community into the fold at the very beginning of the game, and we've been working with them to balance these civilizations. And we're also been partnering with Forgotten Empires, who's been a long part of the franchise, and they're working with us on the balance team, and collaboratively we're working with Relic to get the balance right for launch, because these are way more diverse asymmetry civilizations, so they just need more refinement. They need a lot of refinement as we look at launch, and the Relic is very passionate about that, and they're working heavily against that right now.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think the balancing will be the crucial point, because when you have 8 civilizations, it's really difficult to balance it. I mean, yes. StarCraft, for example, with 3 civilizations already, that it took them years to find a balance that everybody or almost everybody is happy with. Now, I really like that each civilization will have its unique way to be played, and that you have to learn to play the civilization, and also that maybe historic features that the civilization in reality had will then translate into a different way to approach the game. Maybe some civilizations are better early game, others better late game, have certain units that have better upgrades, as we already know it from, for example, Age of Empires 3. So there's a lot of things coming to my mind. One question I would have is there an underlying rock, paper, scissors mechanic, or anything that people already know maybe from the previous games that they from which they can build on and have a basic understanding of the game right from the get-go?
Absolutely, yeah. That was one of the guiding principles that we were working under, was this sort of concept of familiar to unexpected. That we wanted elements of the game to be familiar to players of the franchise who were coming in, maybe coming back to the franchise. That, you know, they understood that there was a rock, paper, scissors relationship that exists between, you know, spearmen and range units and horsemen, and there are counters and counterplay systems within those unit relationships, and those you know, survive more or less intact as part of the Age formula. Excuse me. And then we take that, you know, familiarity that certain civs will feel a little more familiar on first play than you know, we talked about sort of vanilla civs, that these are ones that we wanted to keep a little closer to existing civilizations, that players had a landing point and a launching point to explore more of the game. So something like the English, they on paper look a lot, you know, like a previous civ, but they've got a lot, you know, they've got different openings, they've got different units, they've got different upgrades, and that helps diversify them from previous games. But they're a great starting point. You know, if you're coming back to the franchise, it's like you play them, it'll feel familiar, it'll feel comfortable, and then you can, you know, go off and explore the Mongols or the Delhi Sultanate or the Chinese and experience some of that breadth of design and gameplay.
Mm-hmm. So maybe some quick questions. If you can't answer them yet, of course, that's understandable. Will there be replay? Can I replay multiplayer matches? Will there be the possibility for treaties, no rush treaties? Because when we're talking about learning the game, learning to macro properly, I myself found it very useful that I had, at least for 30 minutes, no rush that I would have to defend, and I could focus in the multiplayer on my macro management. Something that I guess Asian Dynasties introduced to the game, this no rush treaty. So are there some mechanics that you took over from the last parts, or are there even maybe new ones that you can announce now?
Well, probably can't talk too much about some of those things. We'll talk more about them in the future. But learning and growing at a comfortable pace is important. That, you know, we knew that there's a, you know, expected a breadth of the audience is larger. You know, when Microsoft came up to talk to us, they were, you know, telling stories about playing the games with their kids, you know, when they were younger, and, you know, I've got kids as well, and so you know, this is a game, probably the first game I've made in many, many years that my kids will be able to play, not because of difficulty, but just because it's, you know, it's the content, you know, it's a lot more celebratory than some of our previous games. And so, yeah, we've got a number of ways that people can kind of get in and get comfortable with the game, learn the game, whether it's through, you know, our first time user experience, or Art of War challenges, or starting with an easy AI or easy mode in campaign. And so a lot of ways for people to kind of learn the experience before they kind of maybe jump into the pool with some of the multiplayer sharks. But there's a lot there to engage with and grow your comfort level as a player.
Yeah. Since you've mentioned AI, maybe I jump in there. I think players have seen in the last years the evolution of deep learning algorithms, playing strategy games like Go or StarCraft 2 even. Has this affected in any way the development or the approach you took towards crafting the AI? Because that's always a question that comes up. How intelligent will the AI be? Will it be boring because I can just abuse one fallacy that the AI typically always has, or will it feel like engaging a human player?
We did some use some pretty modern tools to develop parts of the AI, especially how it manages and understands combat. And there is a learning algorithm neural net that helps it understand counters and whether it thinks it's going to win a battle or lose a battle, and whether it wants to pull away from the battle or engage in the battle. And AI is always challenging because I think you're sort of constantly going around and putting out little fires where people will figure out how to abuse elements of it. And so that's an evolving process as well, as we're going through with the balance team and with civ designers. But I think the combat learning system is really new and unique for us, and gives the AI some really interesting behaviors.
Mm-hmm. That sounds good. Will there be continuous support regarding the balancing? Can you promise that already, or will it stop once the game is out? Because of course players will always come up with new techniques that however much effort you've put into prior to the release, you will not have thought of. So will there be continuous support in that regard?
Yeah, Mike can add to this, but I think this is just the start of the conversation with the player base, with the communities, with the fans. That if you look at our track record and World's Edge track record, there's continual support, balance patches, updates. So yeah, we know once the game goes out, the many bets are off as to what our future plans were. So we want we want to see what the community wants to do, and we have to help keep that community vibrant and the game fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Relic and World's Edge are committed to supporting that community, and it's just the start of the journey. The launch is the start of the journey. Quinn highlighted beautifully, like what we think the features, the items that we want to have. The community's going to have their ideas. We're going to embrace those ideas and grow the experience together. It may be completely different 2-3 years after launch than what we launched today.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a strategy game that is perfect on launch in terms of its balance, right? Developing a strategy game is a conversation with the audience, and supporting a strategy game is an even greater conversation. So we've worked with the community throughout development to, try and get it as close to great as we can on day one. But as you say, people are immediately going to start, finding things that are working in new and unexpected ways. And that's a wonderful part of building a strategy game, right? Like, the idea is to build something that people can use in unexpected ways and do new and exciting things with. And then we just have to be there to continue conversing with that, making sure that doesn't become a dominant strategy that just makes the PvP experience boring. And some of that is watching as the community reacts and as the meta evolves, and some of that is reacting, to balance issues and putting in patches and continuing those discussions. And that's always been part of what makes of our plan and of what makes Age of Empires so special.
Yeah, so you have talked about the landmark decisions that will in some way predetermine the path that you take in one match, and that will, where you have to decide on what focus you want to put attention to or not. One question to Philip maybe, are those landmark decisions historically inspired? So are those decisions sometimes decisions that the state, the country, the king, whoever, found itself also in?
Well, like much of the game, we used history as an inspiration, as a launching point. So the visual design of the landmarks is inspired by historical buildings that are tied to those cultures. And the mechanics that are tied into them are also, inspired from sort of historical trends that happened in those cultures. The Chinese is the most stark example so far, in that you can make the decision to build both landmarks, and that triggers a dynasty. And that dynasty comes with new units, new mechanics, unique structures. That obviously reflects the breadth and richness of Chinese history and Chinese culture. There's similar things for other civs. For some, the decisions are, maybe more like, here are two buildings that in and of themselves are special and give you a benefit right on the field. Which one do you want? Do you want a landmark that will produce longbowmen more quickly than the archery range, or do you want one that will heal in an area? Like, that's an early decision that is in the English civ, whereas others will be a little broader, like you say, sort of slanting your decision as to which way you want to build the civ. So there's a lot of variety there, and history is always the starting place for those that ideation.
Great. Yeah, I myself always love it when strategy games are historic. So I mainly focus on strategy games that are historic, because those are two interests, and when they come together, it's just great. And it's also a great way to learn history. I think so. For children, I would recommend it always.
Yeah, absolutely.
Apart from strategic thinking, of course. So speaking of strategic thinking, I just want to ask, it's an easy yes or no question maybe. Are there any RNG elements in the game, in the match? So of course in the campaign maybe, but are there some, I guess there are no spells or something like that, but are there some abilities that units have that might realize themselves or not? So is there an element of luck in the game, or is it very mechanic and you can always rely on what you do?
I'm trying to think if there are examples. I know, the Company Heroes franchise lived and died on RNG, or players lived and died sometimes on RNG. We wanted to build an Age of Empires game, and I think there might be some level, when you have maybe an area damage from a projectile or something like that. But generally, the focus was on a more sort of one-to-one, output of attack and damage, for example. So I'm trying to think if there are some examples of it, but I think the Age formula is built around more sort of predictability and a deep understanding of how these mechanics and systems relate to each other. Whereas Company Heroes there's a lot of experiential things and trends rather than sort of super predictable outcomes for a specific engagement. So I think the community, the competitive players in Age love to see how these systems react and interact and how the damage is done, and they get into the numbers and analyze the outcomes of things, and so I think most things are more predictable, but I wouldn't say it's completely gone. I can't say with complete certainty that there's no RNG.
Yeah, well, it's not a fetish anyway.
Yeah.
The major place where there's some randomness, and I don't think this really qualifies as RNG, is in map generation, right? Yeah. That's the historical, that's part of the Age of Empires DNA, is that when you generate a map, you're setting some parameters, but you don't know exactly where your enemy is spawning. You don't know where the resources are. The terrain is going to be different each time, and so on. And so scouting becomes an important thing. So that is, a random element at match start, and is definitely something our map team has spent a lot of time trying to get that random generation right, so it's not creating these imbalanced maps. But once the game starts, your mechanics are highly predictable.
Mm-hmm. So if you manage to do that successfully, that will be great, because every strategy game that I can think of that has, let's put it differently. For example, in StarCraft, you have a map pool of like 8 maps, and it's always the same map. So you try hard to really exercise the building order correctly, which is something that I think Age of Empires players do not enjoy too much. They don't want to try hard the building order. They want to think on their feet and to develop new strategies right while they're playing. And when the map always changes, I think that's exactly what an Age of Empires player might be looking for. Speaking of maps and of Company of Heroes, I have one particular question, because in Company of Heroes, you were conquering, so to say, certain areas of the map in order to get supply. And that encourages the player to play actively, to have an active play style, not to camp just in the corner of the map. Is there any such mechanic in Age of Empires 4 as well? In Age 3, we had the trade posts, for example. So are there things that motivate me to go out and to approach my enemy?
Yes, yeah, there are, both in victory conditions. I think we showed a few in the fan trailer. The standard conquest victory of, we have a slight twist on it in that you have to destroy enemy landmarks to achieve that victory. You can capture sacred sites on the map, which is maybe a nod to some of the elements of Company of Heroes, and then the wonder. But there are elements that get you out onto the map. But we did want to add a little more safety for casual players, and we've done that in terms of our resource balance and adding elements of siege gameplay, walkable walls, and those kinds of things. So there are a big segment of the player base love to feel safe. They want to get a base to start from, and so we've given them a few more tools, maybe a few more economic tools to help promote that. You can't turtle forever. Ultimately the advantage will swing to the attacker, but there's more options there, I think, to build in and feel safe as a more casual player. I tend to play that way a little bit. We have a different play style than the competitive players. We want to build a little base and set out bigger armies, and competitive players are raiding constantly yes. Moving, and small attacks, and so it's a very different style. Some of the civilizations are a little bit better at early game defense than others, and players may gravitate towards that depending on their style. So but ultimately, we want players to engage with each other, right? There's you can build a beautiful city, and some players love that, but ultimately the game is competitive, and you want to get out there and start fighting.
So when it comes, sorry, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, like, the core economy of Age will be very familiar to Age players. You are harvesting wood, harvesting food, harvesting stone and gold. So that inherently gives you an opening moment where you can just gather nearby resources and start building your town. And we didn't want to lose that, right? That's part of what makes Age of Empires is that that compelling work that Quinn has talked about. And then the things that draw you out are maybe the next layer where you want to find additional resources or find those sacred sites, or that knowledge of the map is important for later in the game, so you want to send out scouts and see what's happening there.
Yeah, that sounds great. One last question. Since Age of Empires, as you've just said, is also about connecting players and bringing together friends of history and strategy, are there any elements in the multiplayer that allow for connectivity? For example, clans, or will there be a league? When I think of Shogun 2 Total War, for example, there was a campaign map where clans could try to win an area of the map by having the most wins within 24 hours, stuff like that. Or is it a matchmaking based on ELO? And that's it. So yeah, can you already give us insights on that, or is it still a secret?
It's part of our communication closer to launch as we look at the summertime. So.
All right. Yeah, then I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. So I mean, apart from thousands of questions that I could always ask, I think that mainly covered what I wanted to ask, and I'm very happy with what you've answered. I think it's an Age of Empires that we're going to get, judging from what you said, and that's already by itself something I like.
Awesome, thank you. Hey, thanks very much for
excellent.
taking the time to meet with us today.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Right.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.